So in this video, we're going to give you the opportunity to listen to Dave Ward, our key speaker at our AGM. So let's get it going. Hi and welcome to this episode of the forum. My name is Scott Haslam and I'm your Vice President of the Leeds No1 Amalgamated branch of the Communication Workers Union. Our videos include tutorials, interviews and news like this one, so if this is your first time watching or haven't already, please consider subscribing and hit the bell symbol to be notified when we upload future videos.
We're talking about what's happening in the branch, what's happening in the union, but it is important that you take this opportunity. One, so that we can have a proper debate about what's happening in your workplace, and I'm happy to discuss anything. Obviously, I'm not as close to some of the detail with that as some of the people that are around me. But what I want to do is, I want to talk about the direction of the union. I want to talk about the challenges that workers face, that you face, your families face. Most importantly, I want to talk about what we've got to do something about some of these issues, because I think that's always the thing that we focus less on. And I think today we need to start talking about what are some of the solutions to some of the problems that we face. I want to set the scene for this contribution by giving you a stat that I think is actually more important than any stat around the economic analysis of what's going to happen with Brexit, around any economic stat that anyone wants to throw at you about how's the country performing, what's the productivity rates. And it's a stat that I think tells a story of what are some of the real problems that people in this country are facing and why. And it's that as a percentage of the overall economy, the GDP of the country, workers' wages in the last 40 years have fallen from 65% to 49%. And it's a stat that's not often talked about. I wonder what that was touching me there. I think it was a fly coming around. And it's something that I want you to hold on to, and I want you to talk to your members in the workplace about, and I want you to talk to your families about it, because I think it really is something that we've got to address, and how we connect all the things that we're going to talk about here to that, and what we're going to do about changing that, I think is absolutely the number one task for all of us in the labour movement. So let me talk about the direction of the union. We're trying to do really two things in the CWU at the moment. One is we're trying to ensure that we can continue to be a union that puts the protection and enhancements of our members' terms and conditions at the heart of everything we do. What we've tried to do in the last few years is completely overhaul our communications. We're trying to redesign the union to get closer to where the members are, to look at trade unionism and workplace trade unionism in a slightly different way. We're passionate about workplace trade unionism. I think we are the only union in the country that still has a structure where you can have local reps in place on every shift, in every sorting office. And it's the type of trade unionism that's come under threat because of the wider pressures that are on us. But it's the type of trade unionism that, as long as I'm General Secretary, the CWU must fight to maintain. The question is how do we do it? And I think the CWU is in a good place if you look at the 4 Pillars agreement and the campaign that led to the 4 Pillars agreement. This was a level of engagement that no other union in the UK can match. And it was done by a combination of face-to-face meetings, and it was done by a combination of using the new communication techniques that we're fully aware of within our industry, that threaten our industry, to reach out to people in a very different way. And it was a proud day when we had our National Gate Meeting Day, and we got people right up and down the country, one coming out of their workplace to speak to union reps about why it was important that they got behind the union and voted yes in an industrial action ballot, the first major ballot under the new Tory laws, where the thresholds have been raised higher. But we also did a thing that I don't think has been done before, and it actually happened National Gate Meeting Day at the TUC. And on that day, we bombarded social media with pictures of postal workers standing outside their sorting office, talking to their reps, but sending a message that they were voting yes for industrial action. And I have no doubt that that changed the view of those trade union laws, that you can actually beat these laws. If you do, the contact with the members on face-to-face, you never take that away. And if you use some of these technologies to show our strength and build that strength. So we want to do more of that, not less of it. That's why you'll see us constantly trying different things with our new communications team. If you're at headquarters these days, it's not unusual to be sitting in your office and you might be in the middle of doing something, and the comms team will actually walk in and put a mic underneath you and say, well, what are you doing? We're on Facebook Live at the moment. Tell the members what's going on. And I'm a supporter of that in a big way, albeit we have to recognise that we also have to get on with some of the stuff that we're doing, because I think it's important that the members understand what the leadership of the union is doing. So I have no issue with that, and we want to spread that. We want to spread that to branches. The other week we did our first AGM online with the Western Counties branch, where there were members in the room like this on a Wednesday evening. It's a delivery only branch in that sense. And we opened, the branch opened up their own Facebook Live session to other members who couldn't get there on that day. So there were members from their branch coming online to listen. And we also opened it up to our own members across the country, with the caveat that the members across the country couldn't actually come into the debate because they weren't part of the branch as such, and it was an AGM. So continually doing this and investing in our frontline reps is the key to redesign. I learned a lesson many, many years ago, and I've never forgot that lesson. And when people say to me, well, you're the General Secretary of a strong union, you must be in a very powerful position. I always say to them, the most powerful position that I ever had in this union was when I was a local rep in Tooting Delivery Office. And I'll tell you why. Because when we worked hard to listen to the members, to get the members back together, and to take action sometimes on issues that you had to take action on, when we had 100% of people backing us in local actions, whether that be sitting in the canteen, backing their rep, to deal with some of the very problems, John, maybe some of the problems that you raised, that you guys see every single day in the workplace. There's nothing stronger than that. It is something that nobody can just dismiss. So building that workplace solidarity is the key to the redesign of the union, and refreshing our workplace trade unionism is vital for this union. And dealing with the fact that our reps are under increasing pressure on a daily basis, and investing more in supporting those reps has to be a byproduct of the redesign of the union. So that's one direction. Let's keep what we're good at, let's build on it, let's make it stronger, let's take it elsewhere into the trade union movement. The second direction is that we're analysing the problems that our members face, and we're connecting them more and more with the pressures that all workers in the UK are under. And we're also connecting them to the reality of the economic and political forces that stand in our way. And let me say this, I have never been more convinced that if we want to maintain our members' terms and conditions, if we want to maintain industrial strength, if we want to rebuild trade unionism, then we have to connect it to what's happening around us. Without that connection, we're only going in one direction. And I'm pleased that Richard is here today as somebody who I think you've got one of the best local MPs in the country and somebody who has a big future in the labour movement, who understands that as well as anybody that I've seen recently in the Labour Party. So that's the direction. Now let's talk about some of the challenges. I want to talk about a challenge. We was talking yesterday, Andy, about the reality of the pressures our members are under in the workplace, the pressure that you guys are under, daily pressure. And what do we do about that? Well, I want to remind you of the point about local solidarity and local action. I was talking to Dave last night, and he was saying, I saw you just giving a short message to a couple of offices that were taking action over the weekend, over those same pressures, where despite the IR framework, despite all of the other things, we had a difference of opinion, and we backed that local office. And I was saying solidarity to those members who were taking action. And what I was saying to Dave was we want to rebuild the confidence that in truth, and we've got to be honest about this, the way you deal with them local problems is you have to start coming together locally. You can't deal with that all the time by remote control from CWU headquarters, not with as many workplaces as we've got. So we're trying to encourage that spirit that those workers took place in their local disputes, and we're trying to use social media to show people what's really going on around the country. And actually there's a lot of offices that are starting to deal with the culture of bullying locally through action. And it's action that the union should support. And frankly, I don't care whether it's unofficial action, whether it's balloted action, whether it's sitting in the canteen and just making a point and that you're not going to go back until something is sorted out. These are the type of things, within reason, that we need to be doing more of. So, you know, I'm going to say this to you about the culture issue at the moment in the business. Yes, there's lots of visits that are going on, and I think they'll be beneficial because they will expose some of these managers. But the real thing about culture is this: there is no stronger culture than workers coming together to deal with bullying. It's always been the way, and it always will be the way. And it's the thing that we have to work on as much as anything else. The second thing we've got to do is a bit controversial as well. And it's time, I think, to reassess where we are with technology. To reassess whether it's right for us to just accept that there's a science there, that there's technology that they can build into everything, all these different things, PDAs, that they can see where you are at any point of the day, that they can know whether you finished early, and therefore they can use that to build in a new duty structure, and they can use it to make people do other people's work and work every second of the day. And thus far, the trade union movement has kind of gone along with technology from a point of view that you can't actually disagree with some of the science that's in there. But I think you can start to disagree as to whether it's being used in a fair way. So I'm going to say to you, I'd like to see our union start to challenge the use of technology that puts the real pressure on our workers. The managers that you are faced with day in, day out, some of them are idiots, some of them are probably decent people, and they're under pressure, like you are under pressure, to deliver numbers that are all part of this world of you hit numbers and productivity is measured in this way, but it has no real substance to it about, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that this business is actually a good business? That it treats its workers well? That it does things for the public and in our products and services that we're doing well? And I'm not convinced that technology and its growing use in the workplace can be left unchallenged anymore. And that might be quite a radical move. And I'm going to talk about how we connect that to some of the wider problems that workers face in a minute. What about the future of the industry? Rico Back has come in, and he's come in to move this industry into what they see as the real benefits from privatisation. No coincidence that when he turned up, he issued a profit warning almost immediately. the shares dipped. I think they've gone down something like 49% in recent weeks. And the company was sold off on the cheap. But the reality is, the real benefits that they want to get from privatisation don't just come from driving up productivity in a local office. They come from changing the employment model and going back to the thing that he learned in Europe, where what they did in Europe was, in his world, the GLS company, Parcel World, he made his money on the back of all of these insecure employment models, where you don't have a proper pension, you don't have proper contracts of employment, you pay people to find their own substitutes, and you put them under immense pressure. All the equipment is not the company paying out that equipment, it's the individual having to foot the bill for that. You give some of them a bit of money, by the way. Some of them you encourage, if you deliver X, you might earn a lot of money. But it's a work till you drop mentality that cannot be sustained. And of course what they do in that world, they start saying, when you pass on your job, we'll give you a bit more to do, and then you can go and subcontract that work out to somebody else. And of course what happens is, that somebody else does it for even less than the person that was there before. This is a massive issue in the world of work. And I'm here to say to you today that Rico back and the challenges that are going to come our way very soon, I think are going to illustrate this as the real sort of battleground that we've got to deal with. So what are we going to do about it? Well, I think we've got to change. I don't think we can protect thousands of jobs in an industry that is being affected not just by the reality of the labour market, but is also being affected by the reality of sociological change. The world of communications has changed and it's going to continue to change. And we need to think about shaping the change with our vision of what change could be for postal workers. I hold on to this thought all the time, that postal workers, in my view, are one of the most respected group of workers in this country. People still love to see a postal worker and a Royal Mail van and somebody in a proper uniform walking around the streets. The question is, how can we expand their role to make what we're doing give us the chance to carry on doing jobs? And I think it means thinking very differently. So I'm saying to you that with the industry, with the POL industry as well, it's time to think of a vision for the future that connects us back to the public, maybe doing different things, maybe integrating with some of the policies that Labour are putting forward on how you rebuild communities and how you rebuild towns. So we need to set out our vision, not Rico Back's vision, and we need to make sure that we fight for that vision. And we need to see serious growth and bargain for growth, not see all the money that Royal Mail wants to spend in investment by buying up European postal operators, which is where I think some of that money is going. Let me link that to the problems in the wider world of work. And I'm always saying, I think that workers face two choices, workers right across the country. One future, we have one of two futures here. One future is to continue to allow the likes of Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies to own the benefits of technology. And if we allow that to happen, they're already more powerful than most governments in countries around the world. They're going to get more and more powerful, and the only future for workers in that world is that we're going to be scrapping for what they throw away in terms of insecure employment, and we're going to be competing against each other more and more in the race to the bottom. The other future is that we actually do something about it, and the only way that we can do something about it is to join up with other workers and to start a trade union campaign for a new deal for workers, where we genuinely share in the benefits. We actually take some of the wealth that they're creating and we grab hold of it and we say, work don't have to be like it is. we can slow down the pressure of work. We can make our lives better and our families' lives better. But we've got to grab hold of some of what they own at the moment and use it in our benefit. So the CWU's put forward a campaign within the trade union movement. Unfortunately, with Brexit, it's very hard to get it to the top of the agenda, but we're working on ways of doing that. And there's 4 points to our campaign. One is we are calling for unions in sectors of the economy, like our sector, to have a common bargaining agenda, to pick out 3 or 4 points that must be the same all the way round, and to say we are going to take on employers right across this sector, the communication sector, and we're going to root out insecure employment models, and we're going to create the race to the top in our own sector. The second point is unions have got to cooperate more to organise workers. We moan about competition. We know the dangers of competition, but I'll be honest with you, there's too much internal competition in the trade union movement when we're all losing members. Trade unionism in this country has gone down from a membership high in 1979 of 13 million workers to around 6 million workers today. That means we need to think a little bit differently about the models of trade unionism that are going to rebuild our movement. And the CWU is right at the forefront of this debate. One, because for our own future, we need to make sure that we look outside our existing boundaries. 2, for the future of workers. And there's nothing more important for that for trade unions. We've got to reach out. So let's stop the internal competition and let's build real cooperation, but let's take on sectors one at a time. I'm putting a paper to our national executive on Thursday that suggests exactly that we don't just carry motions at the TUC, which we've carried and it's TUC policy, that we put those motions into action in our own sector, and that's what we're going to do. The third point is we need to publish a manifesto on what a new deal for workers should look like. And that manifesto could be a real change in work. It could really mean that we get workers on side and we make sure that everybody knows there's 6 or 7 issues here. Pay's obviously up there. The type of models of ownership that Labour are talking about, rather than a privatised industry that we work in. Let's have a different view of what a renationalised Royal Mail could look like, what public industries could look like in the future. Not like they were before, like they could be if we link it to some of the political agendas. So we're going to set out that manifesto, and we want all trade unions to publicise that. The fourth point is action, but not stupid action. And we're saying that at some point, and I'm on record as saying if the TUC don't call a day of action, then the CWU will. Now we've got to build towards that, I'm not silly, and we've got to make sure that our other unions are on board, and we're doing that work in the background. But what we're saying is this: why don't we say that on a given day, later this year, perhaps after the TUC conference and after the Labour Party conference, that we have a day where workers say, we want a new deal. We make this the #1 political issue in the country, that workers deserve better. And I'm not talking about the debate in Brexit, about the difference between, as important as that is, workers' rights, because I think that's actually quite a narrow debate between what's on offer and what people are saying they'll settle for. I'm talking about something far more radical than that. I'm talking about our new deal that we would have set out our manifesto for, that all workers would get behind, that lines up pretty closely with what Labour are saying, although goes beyond what Labour will say. That day of action could be like we had our National Gate meeting day, because I'm not here to tell you that we're going to call a general strike, because we can't deliver a general strike. And we can't deliver a general strike because we ain't got the support amongst people at the moment for that action. And I'm not saying necessarily that that's needed. I'm saying we need to think differently about what action can do. We need to use social media. We will be offering people around a menu of options. So if you're a strong union like ours, I think we could get our members on the street on a National Gate meeting day for half an hour, and we'd show our protest, and we'll do something similar to what we did on that day. We'll show the world that workers in Royal Mail and the CWU and all our industries are up for a new deal for workers, that they recognise that the pressures that they're under are linked to these other issues as well. For other unions that aren't in that place, and for workers that are not in trade unions, well, it might be something further down the scale, but it's something you build on. Now imagine the power of Francis O'Grady with the likes of Len McCluskey, me and other trade union leaders holding a press conference and saying that we're going to do that, and saying to all of our communications teams with all of the techniques that we've been talking about, getting out to workers. Imagine what that would do to workers who are not in a trade union. That's how you rebuild the trade union movement. You give them a vision of the future that they want to buy into, because they realise that without that solidarity, their lives are going to continue to be how it is at the moment. The final point I want to make is this: you have to link this to fundamental political change. If we can't do something at the moment to change, don't know how you feel about things, I like to keep these things pretty simple, and this is what I see. I see my grandkids, I see my own kids having to deal with a reality that I didn't have to deal with when I started work. And I think it's this. It's that I can't remember a time in my lifetime when the old adage of if you get your head down, if you work hard, you'll get on, has never been farther out of people's reach. What it is now, more than any time in my lifetime, is what your parents give you at the start that gets you moving. That can't be right. And we have got to do something about that. And I'm going to say something to you about, Richard will talk about this I'm sure, the current Labour split, Brexit. I don't think there's anything more important than sorting out the problems in the UK. And I honestly believe with Brexit, the difference between a soft Brexit, which Labour have put forward, and staying in Europe is at the margins. The real difference that will be made to people's lives is if we get Labour elected on that manifesto. And that means that we've got to stay true to what we backed when Jeremy Corbyn became leader. And I've got no time whatsoever for people who, when I analyse those people, there's one common denominator when they can stand up and say we need a new politics, we need a new way of doing business. Well, let me tell you that the people I've met out of that group, and one of them we spoke about earlier on, Chuka, they, when they had a position of power, I never heard them standing up for workers then. I saw them backing exactly the same economic approach, exactly the same weak approach on changing things in society. Sounds good, looks good, but it ain't going to deliver. And I'm going to say this to you, whatever you think of Jeremy Corbyn, in my view, he is the most important political figure, and history will tell this, in the last 40 or 50 years. Wherever Jeremy goes in the future, and he's no youngster, and we've got to take that into account. And there will be policies that Labour needs to reach out more on, no doubt about that, around security, around the reality of free movement without proper protection of workers that undercuts people's pay terms and conditions. We've got to reach out a little bit more and understand those issues. But I'm going to say this, he'll go down in history as the person that changed the Labour Party. And if there's one thing we need to do, is hold on to that manifesto, implement that manifesto, and get out talking about the real issues that are going to change people's lives in this country. Thanks very much.
To please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and please share us with your friends on social media. Remember, unity is strength. Thanks for watching.